Good morning. Welcome to today's Connecting Christ video devotion. We are in the Gospel of John, John chapter 11. It's the raising of Lazarus. We see a beautiful thing that's taking place, but also just learn of more of the humanity of our Lord Jesus as he just expresses himself in very human ways. So how might you respond to the death of someone you loved? Now you can pause the video right here and think about that, or maybe it just comes quite naturally to you. Because there's a few responses that we can think of. We could think of being very sorrowful. Maybe it was someone, maybe it's someone you loved passed away before you think their time is necessary. Before they're young, we should say, because that sadly does happen. Or maybe you're relieved that someone's suffering is over, but yet still sad over the fact that they're gone. Maybe you're angry at all the things that have taken place and how their lives seem to be just stolen from you. See, all of this is a very real reality of what we go through when people die. And what Jesus does here and how he responds in two different ways to both Mary and Martha in the death of their brother. Obviously, they're distraught over the fact and how each of them respond differently. And Jesus comes in and responds appropriately to them, meeting them where they're at. With Martha, he says, or with Martha, Martha comes out and says, "If you'd been here, my brother would not have died." And Martha confidently says that she knows he will rise again on the last day. Just a wonderful bit of confidence and sure a certain hope in God and what He promises. And how she looks to Jesus because He is the fulfillment of that promise. And yet in just a few verses later, he comes to Mary, and Mary rose quickly and go. This is in verse 31. When the Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary rise quickly to go out, they followed her. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, said, "Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died." And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews weeping, who had come with her, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. "Where have you laid him?" And then we get the shortest verse in the Bible in verse 35, and Jesus wept. A different response to the grief of losing a loved one. Sorrowful tears, and that's okay. Even Jesus himself was deeply moved in that way, in that he was sad, sorrowful over the fact that death is a real thing in this world. Death is a reality that we all face. But just like what Martha was saying, and what ends up in the story, death doesn't have the last word. Jesus does. Jesus speaks, calls Lazarus out, and he rises from that grave. Now, this isn't just like the resurrection, because the resurrection will happen at the end of all days, when the Lord shall return and raise us to new life, where we will all rise in our glorified bodies. This is just a raising of the dead to demonstrate that Jesus has the power over death. And that power, through his victory, through his ultimate victory on the cross, and through his resurrection, that power is given to us as well. Maybe not to run away from the experience of death, or to not experience it entirely, but to know with a sure and certain hope that we will rise again on the last day, just as Martha says, and just as Jesus promises. And something joyful to realize and to recognize. with that sure and certain hope, rejoice, knowing that death does not have the last word. Jesus does. Amen.